You know that uncomfortable moment when someone asks, "So what do you do?" And your brain freezes. Because technically you're a graphic designer who codes, who writes poetry, who studies neuroscience, and recently started learning woodworking. And suddenly you feel like something is wrong with you. Like everyone else figured out their lane. And you somehow missed the memo. For years the world reinforced that feeling. Jack of all trades, master of none. Career advisors told you to focus. Pick one thing. Specialize. But something interesting just happened. The world quietly changed its mind about what valuable looks like. And people like you might suddenly be exactly what the future needs. For most of the last century, society rewarded specialists. Success meant going deep into one narrow field. Psychologists call this a kind learning environment. The rules are stable. The feedback is clear. The same skills keep working for decades. Think of a golfer. The course changes slightly, but the rules stay the same. Practice long enough and expertise compounds. But that's not the environment most industries operate in anymore. Today, we're increasingly living in what experts call a wicked learning environment. The rules change constantly. Feedback is delayed. Patterns are unclear. Think of a firefighter. Every situation is different. Every decision happens with incomplete information. The skills that worked yesterday may not work today. And in environments like that, hyper-specialization can actually become a liability. Because specialists often develop blind spots outside their narrow domain. Meanwhile, there's another type of professional emerging. Researchers sometimes describe them as M-shaped professionals. Imagine the letter M. Each vertical line represents a deep area of expertise. One pillar might be software engineering. Another might be psychology. Then across the top are the connections between them: design, strategy, communication, creativity. Suddenly you're not just a programmer. You're the person who builds software that humans actually love using. Because you understand both technology and human behavior. That combination is rare and increasingly valuable. The World Economic Forum's Future of Jobs report predicts that nearly 40% of core skills will change by 2030. Not slowly evolve. Change. The fastest growing skills include creative thinking, analytical reasoning, flexibility, resilience, and the ability to synthesize knowledge across different domains. In other words, the future belongs to people who can move between worlds. But here's the part most people misunderstand. Being multidisciplinary doesn't mean trying to master everything at once. That creates what researchers call the dash-shaped professional. Wide knowledge, but no depth. And that creates anxiety because there's no foundation. The real strategy is something called serial mastery. You build one pillar at a time. For a season, maybe 6 months, maybe a year, you focus deeply on one domain. Not to become the world's best, just strong enough to solve real problems without constant guidance. Then when that pillar feels stable, you begin the next one. Not because you're quitting, because you've graduated from beginner to practitioner. Over time, those pillars begin connecting in surprising ways. This is where something powerful happens inside the brain. Psychologists call it far transfer. A specialist applies knowledge to similar problems. But people with diverse knowledge start seeing patterns across completely different fields. An architect might see database structures the way they see building frameworks. A musician might recognize rhythm and harmony in software systems. A storyteller might turn raw data into insights people actually understand. This ability, connecting ideas across domains, is where breakthroughs often come from. And it's something AI struggles to replicate. Because true synthesis requires lived experience across different contexts. Standing at the intersection of technology, psychology, creativity, and human behavior. Seeing patterns where others only see separate disciplines. That's M-shaped thinking. But let's be honest, this path isn't simple. Being multidisciplinary means repeatedly going from expert to beginner. Your career path won't look like a straight ladder. It'll look more like a Jackson Pollock painting. But history suggests that adaptability often beats specialization when environments change rapidly. Kodak had some of the best photography experts in the world. Blockbuster had some of the best video rental specialists. Both disappeared when the rules changed. Meanwhile, the people who adapt quickly, who can learn new systems and synthesize ideas, tend to thrive during disruption. There's another practical piece to this. Your job doesn't always have to be your passion. Sometimes the healthiest setup is a low-drain job that gives you stability and mental energy. Einstein developed the foundations of relativity while working as a patent clerk. Stable work, space to think, space to explore. The final ingredient is having a system. Because people with wide curiosity often generate more ideas than their working memory can hold. Your brain is like a workbench. If every idea stays on the bench, eventually there's no room left to build anything new. But if you capture those ideas in a notebook, Notion, Obsidian, anywhere, they become a library of future insights. Maybe you spend a week obsessed with medieval architecture. 3 years later, you're designing a website and suddenly realize the structure of a cathedral solves your layout problem. Those connections only happen when ideas are stored and revisited. And increasingly, companies are looking for exactly this kind of thinking. Not just specialists, but people with unique combinations of expertise. Creative technologists, strategists who understand psychology and data, leaders who navigate both human systems and technical complexity. Innovation rarely comes from one discipline alone. It happens when ideas collide, when architecture informs software, when storytelling explains data, when psychology shapes technology. That's synthesis. And synthesis requires multiple perspectives. So if you spent years feeling scattered, if you've been told you lack focus, it's possible you weren't unfocused at all. You were building the raw materials for a different kind of intelligence. One designed for a world where change is constant, where adaptability matters more than rigid expertise. You don't need to master everything. Just start with one pillar. Build depth, then build the next. Over time, the connections between them become your real advantage. The future doesn't only belong to specialists. It belongs to people who can connect worlds that were never meant to meet. And if you've always been drawn to many different fields, you may have been preparing for that future all along. And once you recognize that, it changes how you start seeing skills, careers, and even your own path. And that's where a much deeper pattern begins to unfold that most people never fully connect.